Chapter 16, A Hero Descends from the Sky. Xiaolan was held by her upper body, and the mention of her name as Xiaolan from Dehukin shocked her. She didn't know how to call for help without revealing too much information. These ruffians seemed to have gathered information about her, which made Xiaolan anxious. It was the hottest part of the day, and the streets were already sparsely populated. Moreover, this place was somewhat remote. The three men, two of whom were injured, didn't want to delay further. If she continued screaming like this, someone would come to help. The uninjured one tried to cover Xiaolan's mouth, but she kicked him hard in the groin, causing him to hunch over in pain. Xiaolan then kicked 2 more times, not sure if she hit them, and she used the opportunity to break free from their grip and run towards the alley's exit. In moments of desperation, people can unleash unimaginable strength. Xiaolan was not afraid of being robbed, but she was terrified of being violated. As a young lady, she still wanted to experience a proper romantic relationship in the 1980s. The ruffians, cursing and chasing after her, were getting closer. Xiaolan felt helpless because her body was not strong enough to take on 3 men. As she neared the end of the alley, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking her path. She felt a sense of despair, thinking it was another accomplice of the ruffians. She collided with the person head-on. The man reached out to stabilize her and said, "I'm not one of the bad guys." His accent was different from the local Zhuangcheng County dialect. He continued, "These bastards are too much, trying to harm a woman in broad daylight. The public safety in Zhuangcheng County is terrible. Don't be afraid, Xiaolan, sweating and panting, didn't hear the rest of his words. Instead, she stared at him, surprised. This was the same guy from the street stall who had been watching her all along. The one who had given her that longing look with watery eyes and paused when he said something, leaving her unable to forget. Ignoring the bad intentions of the ruffians, Xiaolan was shocked to encounter him here. She realized that he had been protecting her. At the entrance of the alley, footsteps echoed once more, and another young man approached, his steps confident. He had a mischievous and somewhat devilish look, and his well-groomed hair complemented his facial features. He looked like trouble and was not someone to mess with. When Zhuangcheng raised his head, his eyes locked onto Xiaolan's. She was sweaty and breathless, but she couldn't hide her stunning beauty. Zhuangcheng didn't know many fancy words, but he thought that Xiaolan looked beautiful everywhere, and it left him slightly parched in the mouth. Kong Wei's words were right. This small place in Zhuangcheng County hid a beauty, and that was probably why Kong Wei couldn't stop talking about it on the way to Shanghai. Seeing Xiaolan fight for her safety only reinforced his determination. His blood was boiling, and he was ready to take on those hooligans. Xiaolan sighed with relief, knowing that he had come to help her. She recognized him now and understood that he wasn't one of the bad guys. She didn't know if these 2 were trustworthy, but they had saved her, so she would give them the benefit of the doubt for now. Zhuangcheng noticed a small injury on Xiaolan's forehead and asked, "What happened to your forehead?" Xiaolan hesitated but replied, "I accidentally fell." Zhuangcheng couldn't bear to see the injury on her perfect face. He found it unsightly and wondered if it would leave a scar. Kong Wei tied up the 3 hooligans. One of them had been spewing vulgar words, but Kong Wei kicked him in the face, knocking out several teeth, and finally silenced him. Xiaolan picked up her bicycle, which had suffered damage to her eggs. For every egg she sold, Xiaolan earned 1 cent. She endured the scorching sun to collect eggs from various villages, making 2 trips to Zhuangcheng County every day. Her daily routine involved waking up at 5 a.m. and working until 9 or 10 p.m. with no time for rest in between. Even with this grueling schedule, she could only earn about 10 yuan a day. However, today, after the incident with the ruffians, it felt like all her hard work had been in vain. Although Xiaolan had experienced a lot of hardships in her past life and had faced even more challenging situations, she couldn't help but feel a sense of injustice. Who would want to be reborn in 1983? In her previous life, it took her 20 years to achieve success, and now she had to start from scratch. Frustrated and with red eyes, Xiaolan kicked the ruffians a few more times, saying, "You lowlifes, even if you're up to no good, you can't be any more pathetic. All you know how to do is harass women." Xiaolan wasn't someone to mess with. Despite her seemingly delicate appearance, she had already injured 2 of the ruffians before she was rescued. When they arrived at the police station, Zhuangcheng and Kong Wei took full responsibility and claimed that they were the ones who had fought with the ruffians. The police didn't criticize them for using force. Instead, they praised them formally. "We have received a notice from the Ministry of Public Security that Anqing County will actively cooperate with the crackdown, and criminals will be dealt with swiftly and severely. You two have shown great courage in the face of danger. We will present commendation plaques to your respective units." Kong Wei wondered how they had units to report to. When Xiaolan came out of another room at the police station, a female officer with a friendly attitude assured her that they would maintain her privacy. The world wasn't fair to women. Even though she had narrowly escaped a violation, spreading rumors could lead to people both condemning the ruffians and casting judgment on the woman. Xiaolan knew that, barring any unexpected developments, she would never see these 3 ruffians again. They had been too bold, committing crimes during a crackdown, believing they could get away with harming her to protect their reputation. Unfortunately for them, they underestimated her. Xiaolan might have a bad reputation, but she was fierce and unafraid. She dared to use scissors to poke one of the ruffians in the eye, delaying enough time for help to arrive. After leaving the police station, it was already 6 p.m. Xiaolan was anxious, but she couldn't appear impolite. She insisted on treating her 2 rescuers to a meal at a nearby street stall that served noodles. Xiaolan's budget was tight, and she could only afford a simple meal. They ordered noodles, and she even managed to add a couple of fried eggs. Kong Wei was talkative and extroverted, while Zhuangcheng, who appeared tougher, didn't say much. He seemed like someone who could be trouble. He had a mischievous and somewhat villainous look about him, and he didn't resemble the kind of person who would be easily dominated by the 3 ruffians. However, when Xiaolan was in trouble, he had come to her aid. As they finished their meal, Kong Wei insisted on paying, but Xiaolan refused. She said, "The debt I owe you 2 cannot be repaid with a bowl of noodles. Today, let me treat you." Kong Wei grumbled that he had never been treated to a meal by a girl before. Zhuangcheng put down his chopsticks and said, "You can treat us another day. It's late now. I'll escort you back." The last sentence was directed at Xiaolan. Chapter 17, Brother, have you fallen in love at first sight? Zhuangcheng looked at Xiaolan with a twinkle in his eye, and Xiaolan could see that he held a certain fondness for her. Xiaolan had a good understanding of this world, where looks played a significant role. Men couldn't easily dislike someone with her face, and that's probably why she found herself in trouble earlier today. Zhuangcheng and Kong Wei were her saviors, and Xiaolan felt genuinely grateful. She was aware of how superficial people could be, and her face made it hard for men to dislike her. Otherwise, how could she have ended up in such a situation today? Zhou Cheng and Kong Wei had been on a long journey, and they were planning to take a break in Anqing County before heading back to Beijing. Their primary goal was to return safely, given the cargo they were carrying. Kong Wei couldn't help but sneak a glance at Xiaolan. She was indeed exceptionally beautiful. Had Zhou Cheng, who was known to be uninterested in women, been captivated by her? Kong Wei didn't dare to say anything but chose to support Zhou Cheng, saying, "It's not a trouble at all. It's getting late, and it's not safe for you to be alone, especially if those ruffians have any associates. Rest assured, we are not bad people, and the police have our records." Continuing to decline their offer might give the impression that she didn't trust her saviors. Xiaolan glanced at the large Dongfeng truck, unsure of where to sit. Zhou Cheng handed Xiaolan's bicycle to Kong Wei and said, "You go to the back and keep an eye on the cargo." Kong Wei's heart sank, but he didn't dare to resist Zhou Cheng. He could only squeeze into the crowded cargo area with Xiaolan's bicycle. Xiaolan contemplated going to the back of the truck, but since it was filled with cargo, she thought it might be seen as a lack of trust. So she ended up sitting in the front passenger seat, and the Dongfeng truck started moving. As they left the provincial road and headed towards Qijing village, the road became increasingly rough. Many times, the truck's wheels barely avoided the edge of the road. While walking would take 2 hours and cycling 1, the Dongfeng truck could make the journey in just half an hour. Xiaolan pointed to Qijing village and said, "My home is up ahead. The village roads can't accommodate the truck. Please drop me off here." Throughout the journey, people in the fields were busy with their work. They were in the midst of harvesting, and the harvested rice grains were being carried back home in sacks. The villagers typically ate 2 meals a day, but during the busy farming season, they had to eat 3 to sustain their energy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the strength for the hard labor. Xiaolan had originally planned to return home early today and cook dinner. However, her visit to the police station had delayed her, and she was in a hurry. Zhou Cheng also noticed her anxiety. When she got off the truck, he suddenly asked, "Are you going to Anqing County tomorrow?" After what happened today, most young girls would be frightened and might not continue their business, or they would take a break to recover their composure. However, Zhou Cheng felt that Xiaolan was not an ordinary young girl. Despite her delicate appearance, she seemed quite bold. Xiaolan didn't hesitate and replied, "Of course, I'll be going." "Zhou, big brother, are you and your friends staying at the county guest house tonight? I'll come and bring you breakfast tomorrow." Zhou Cheng, with his mischievous air, smiled and felt that the young lady had a sense of gratitude. He said, "Go back now. Don't leave too early tomorrow. It's not safe." Xiaolan pushed her bicycle and walked back. Lu Fun was worried about her. Since Xiaolan returned later than expected, they couldn't find her when they finished working in the fields. Lu Fun was about to go looking for her when Xiaolan arrived. Although Xiaolan had changed her clothes, the scent of the eggs couldn't be concealed. "I fell on the way, and I had to push my bike back home. Some of the eggs also broke." Xiaolan confessed to her mother. Lu Fun didn't pay much attention to the eggs and asked if she was hurt. Xiaolan spun around and jumped a couple of times, saying, "I'm really fine. I just happened to meet 2 kind-hearted people who gave me a ride. I'll bring them breakfast tomorrow to thank them." Lu Fen, concerned about her daughter, asked, "Why don't you take a day off tomorrow?" Xiaolan replied, "We've already agreed, and I want to show my gratitude by bringing them breakfast. Oh, by the way, I had dinner in the county. What are we having for dinner tonight?" Harvesting rice was not only tiring but also made them sweaty and itchy as the various grass bits stuck to their bodies. After a long day's work, Lu Yong and Li Fengmei rushed to take a shower, while Lu Fen cooked dinner. Meanwhile, Xiaolan watched over Tao Dao. When Xiaolan returned, they urged her to take a bath first. Tao Dao circled around Xiaolan and asked, "Sister Xiaolan, when are you going to take me to the county for a trip?" He looked at her with eager eyes, like a puppy. Xiaolan couldn't resist pinching his little face and said, "Sister is busy making money. I don't have time to play with you, little devil. But if you behave, I'll bring you a gift tomorrow." Tao Dao's eyes lit up. He really wanted to go to the county, not just for the trip, but to stay close to Xiaolan. His father had warned him not to pester her since Xiaolan was there for business, but now she was promising a gift. That was enough to satisfy him. He extended his hand and said, "I don't believe you. You said you'd take me to the city earlier, but you secretly ran away in the morning. Let's pinky swear." Tao Dao stuck out his little finger, and Xiaolan couldn't refuse. They hooked their pinkies together and recited, "Pinky swear, 100 years unbroken. Whoever breaks it is the little dog." Just as they finished, Lu Yong had finished showering and shouted, "You little rascal, who do you think is the little dog? Stop bothering your sister." Xiaolan was the little dog, and Lu Yong, as her uncle, was the old dog. Lu Yong chased after the children playfully. Xiaolan intervened, saying, "Uncle, I'm playing with Tao Dao, it's okay. I'm just entertaining the child." Lu Yong had worked all day and was tired but chased the children as part of the fun. When he heard Xiaolan's words, he suddenly felt happy and said, "You're speaking like an old lady. You're just a child yourself." In Lu Yong's eyes, Xiaolan, an 18-year-old girl, was already old enough to be married, but he still saw her as a half-grown child. Xiaolan had an unfortunate fate to be born into the Xia family, with biased relatives, an absent biological father, and even her uncle refused to acknowledge her as his daughter. She had to take on the responsibility of providing for the family. Lu Yong sighed and asked, "Did you really fall today?" "I'm not your mother." The more Xiaolan interacted with Lu Yong, the more she realized that her uncle was quite shrewd. She explained the events of the day and asked, "Do you think those people were inquiring about my background? Has my bad reputation reached the county?" Xiaolan sold eggs, and she didn't go around telling everyone that she was Xiaolan from Dahua village. Lu Yong was concerned and sensed something amiss. He said, "I'll go to the city tomorrow to find out. It's also a good opportunity to thank the two people who saved your life. Just feeding them a bowl of noodles and sending them away isn't enough." Xiaolan hesitated and said, "But the work in the fields." Lu Yong reassured her, "It's okay. I'll ask others for help in the fields. It won't delay the rice harvest." After dinner, Lu Yong went out, and Xiaolan discussed her plan to bring breakfast for the two people who had saved her with her mother. Xiaolan was known for her talkativeness, but she had limited culinary skills. She could fry a couple of dishes, but making dumplings or even noodles was beyond her. In 1983, self-rising flour wasn't widely available, and they mostly used an old leavening agent. Xiaolan couldn't master the proportions. Li Fengmei chimed in, "We soaked radishes a few days ago, and they're sour enough. Chop some pork and make sour radish and pork dumplings. Using pure meat filling?" That hadn't crossed Xiaolan's mind. Having a hint of meat flavor was a luxury in those days. Who could afford pure meat dumplings? Chapter 18, Sour Radish and Pork Dumplings. Anqing County, located at the border between the north and south regions of China, had diverse culinary influences. While rice was the predominant staple, wheat-based foods were also widely consumed. The cultivation of wheat was slightly less than rice, but during the annual grain collection, wheat was also essential. In rural areas, people ground their own wheat flour to make steamed buns, dumplings, and noodles. The color of the homemade flour was not as appealing as commercially processed white flour, and the texture was coarser. However, it had a richer wheat aroma. Xiaolan's aunt was skilled at pickling vegetables. Her pickled radishes were made from large red-skinned white radishes and were pickled with salt, sugar, and a touch of red chili pepper. The result was sweet, sour, and slightly spicy radishes, perfect for pairing with meat, making the mouth water at the thought. Lu Fan took care of making the dough, while Xiaolan handled the filling. She had woken up an hour early to prepare the ingredients and had made 2 pounds of dumplings. The family only had this much meat, and Xiaolan filled 2 enamel pots with dumplings. She had eaten only a few, leaving the rest for Tao Dao, who was still in bed. She felt a bit embarrassed and said, "I'll buy more meat when I come back later." Meat was relatively expensive, but 1 pound per day was affordable, and Xiaolan knew that the money had to be spent. She could skip fancy clothes, makeup, and personal care products, but she couldn't let her family go hungry. Li Fengmei urged her to leave, saying, "Your uncle has already prepared and is waiting for you at the door. Get going, and don't worry about buying meat. I asked the butcher to save half a pig's liver for you. You and your uncle can come back early." Lu Yong had almost finished packing the eggs and was waiting with his bicycle. He said, "Sit on the rear seat with your back to me, and be careful not to step on the eggs in the baskets on both sides. Your mother was heartbroken last night as she picked up the broken eggs." Many eggs had been broken, and they weren't wild duck eggs, they were all bought with money. Xiaolan worked hard, and despite the opportunities in the 1980s, making money still required sweat and diligence. With 2 enamel pots in her arms, Xiaolan sat down on the rear seat. Lu Yong smiled and said, "Didn't have enough dumplings for breakfast, did you? Hang in there. When we get there, Uncle will treat you to something nice." Xiaolan thought that Lu Yong was going to the county not only to gather information but likely also to express sincere gratitude to Zhou Qing and Kong Wei. Regardless of when it happened, showing gratitude usually involved treating someone to a meal. However, the meal Lu Yong was planning wouldn't be a simple bowl of noodles. She felt uncomfortable knowing that she was using her uncle's money, which she hadn't repaid yet, and that he would be paying for the meal. She said, "Uncle, you're really good to me." Despite his short stature, Lu Yong was more like a father to Xiaolan than her taller biological father, Xia Xiaolan. Lu Yong pedaled the bicycle, lost in thought about how Xiaolan had just said something silly again. He cared for Xiaolan just as much as he cared for his son, Tao Dao. After all, they were all part of the Lu family, how could he not care for them? If he had realized a few years earlier, the family would be living a comfortable life now, and Xiaolan wouldn't have to work so hard to make money by reselling eggs. Lu Yong rode for a while and saw someone on the side of the road. He immediately became alert. It was still early in the morning, and he couldn't imagine who this person could be, idly hanging around. Could it be one of the hooligans from yesterday, waiting on the road to cause trouble for his niece? He asked, "Xiaolan, do you recognize the person ahead?" Xiaolan turned her head to look. In the morning light, the distinctive crew cut and unforgettable appearance left no room for doubt, it was Zhou Qing. She replied, "It's big brother Zhuangcheng. He and another comrade saved me yesterday." Lu Yong quickly applied the brakes, and Xiaolan jumped off, asking, "Big brother Zhou, what are you doing here?" The morning dew had soaked Zhuangcheng's shoulders, and Xiaolan didn't know how long he had been waiting, but there were 7 or 8 cigarette butts on the ground. Upon seeing Xiaolan, Zhuangcheng put out his cigarette and stomped on it a couple of times. He said, "Didn't I tell you to leave a bit later?" He then glanced at Lu Yong, and Xiaolan promptly introduced, "This is my uncle, and he wanted to come and thank you both." "Uncle, this is big brother Zhuangcheng." Zhuangcheng felt a bit out of place. Xiaolan was tall and fair-skinned, while Lu Yong was short and dark-skinned. It didn't look like an uncle-niece relationship at all. Meeting the family so quickly caught Zhuangcheng off guard, but he was naturally relaxed and unconventional. He introduced himself, saying, "Uncle, I'm Zhuangcheng." The young man looked quite decent, standing at about 185 centimeters in height. When he spoke, Lu Yong had to tilt his head to hear, which felt tiring. Lu Yong, full of enthusiasm, said, "Comrade Zhuangcheng, thank you so much. I was telling Xiaolan at home that we must come and thank you and the other comrade properly. This girl doesn't know her manners. A bowl of noodles can't repay a life-saving favor. By the way, where's Comrade Conway?" It was early in the morning, and he hadn't slept. He was waiting for Xiaolan on the way. Lu Yong smiled but felt that a life-saving favor couldn't be repaid with just a bowl of noodles. He couldn't let his niece get involved. Lu Yong was just Xiaolan's uncle, but he could speak up for her. Their relationship was obviously quite good. Zhuangcheng didn't neglect the importance of this meeting and promptly answered, "We stayed at the county guest house last night and left Conway to watch over a carload of goods. I heard that Xiaolan was going into town today, and I was worried those hooligans might have accomplices. So I came to meet her on the way." Lu Yong nodded and said, "Let's go, let's enter the city first." By the time they reached the county town, Zhuangcheng had gathered enough information about Xiaolan. He knew that she and her mother were temporarily staying at her uncle's house, and she had just started reselling eggs. Due to the busy farming season, there were no extra hands at home, and Xiaolan often traveled alone to collect eggs. This was how she had encountered the hooligans. Zhuangcheng furrowed his brow. She was both charming and graceful, but traveling alone to collect eggs from different villages was risky. Once they arrived at the guest house, Conway had been anxiously waiting. When he saw Xiaolan, his eyes lit up. However, after a quick glance at Zhuangcheng, who remained silent, Conway's enthusiasm waned. Xiaolan handed the dumplings to Conway and introduced her uncle. Without much thought, Conway also addressed him as uncle. Zhuangcheng cleared his throat and said, "Why are you calling him uncle? You should call him Uncle Lu." Lu Yong remained silent, but he understood what was going on. Zhuangcheng had ambitions and had no intention of hiding them. Chapter 19, Xiaolan, your boyfriend is quite handsome. Xiaolan could only play dumb. Zhuangcheng's intentions were too obvious. Yesterday, he had escorted her home, and today he was waiting for her alone at the intersection. He was concerned about her family situation and even insisted on addressing her uncle as uncle. He was clearly not abiding by social norms. Having a man showing interest in her felt novel for Xiaolan. In her previous life, she had been too busy struggling for a living, always preoccupied with her career. There was no time for romance. Looks and family background didn't matter, and no young men were relentlessly pursuing her. She had known a client who found her intelligent and wanted to marry her. However, she didn't care about superficial appearances and refused to go on arranged blind dates. She met a rich second-generation businessman who left as soon as he saw her, thinking she wasn't pretty enough. She had tried dating mature men once her career had taken off. With success and wealth, her romantic prospects had improved. But these successful men were more focused on their interests, and before she knew it, she had distanced herself from them. Zhuangcheng was handsome and had good external qualities. Being courted by such a young man left Xiaolan in a dilemma. People often said that modern customs were conservative. She thought Zhuangcheng was too bold. Let's start with breakfast. I'll treat you both to a good meal at lunch to thank you for helping Xiaolan. Lu Yong wanted to go to the police station to inquire about the situation but hesitated. He didn't want to take Xiaolan with him, as he worried the hooligans might have accomplices. Zhuangcheng promptly dispelled his concerns, saying, "I'll accompany Xiaolan to sell the eggs. After that, we can meet at the guest house." Carrying a plate of dumplings, Kong Wei felt quite miserable. He knew he had been left out again. He quickly said, "Uncle Lu, why don't I go with you to the police station? I was also present yesterday, and the police might remember me." Lu Yong hesitated, asking, "Don't you need someone to watch over your goods?" In this day and age, running long distances with a car full of goods could be a profitable business. Lu Yong wasn't sure if they were independent operators or drivers for someone else. Regardless, they couldn't separate from their goods, even if they were staying at a guest house. They would have to take turns sleeping in the car. At night, we need to guard against theft, but during the day, it's fine. There's a locked fence at the back of the cargo area. Lu Yong examined the Dongfeng truck parked in the guest house courtyard. The cargo area at the back was reinforced with thick steel bars, and it was locked with a heavy padlock. Lu Yong's eyebrows twitched. Why were these two so cautious about transporting goods? He became instantly vigilant. Zhuangcheng didn't explain, and Xiaolan quickly intervened, saying, "I'll go sell the eggs by myself. There are many people at the factory gate, and it's daytime. What could go wrong? Thanks for your kindness, Big Brother Zhou." Zhuangcheng didn't speak and continued to gaze at Xiaolan. His eyes seemed to melt her. Kong Wei suddenly became serious and said, "Uncle Lu, I think we should investigate this matter carefully. Those hooligans from yesterday." Kong Wei took Lu Yong away, leaving Xiaolan and Zhuangcheng alone in the guest house courtyard. "Shall we go? If we wait any longer, we might miss the people buying vegetables," Zhuangcheng said as he pushed his bike ahead. Xiaolan had no choice but to follow. Neither of them spoke as they walked to the vendor's stand where they often had noodle soup. The vendor, Aunt Huang, recognized Xiaolan and saw that Zhuangcheng was pushing her bike today. Aunt Huang wanted to make a few jokes but was afraid of misunderstandings. From a distance, she greeted Xiaolan, "Are we sticking to the usual routine for breakfast today?" Xiaolan shook her head and replied, "Auntie, I've already eaten this morning." Zhuangcheng set up his bike and said, "We've traveled quite a distance, so you should eat a bit more. Trouble you to cook 2 bowls of noodles, both with eggs." He was worried that Xiaolan might refuse, so he added, "Even if you've already eaten, please eat a little more with me. I waited for you on the road from 5 a.m., and the dumplings might not be enough. Don't mind me, I have a big appetite." Xiaolan blushed, and she had eaten a few of the dumplings. Zhuangcheng probably thought it wasn't enough for her. The two of them sat down, and Aunt Huang helped steam the dumplings, serving them along with the noodle soup. Zhuangcheng tasted a dumpling, finding it both sour and spicy, a perfect appetizer. He nodded and said, "You're quite skilled, these dumplings are delicious." Northern Chinese people love sour cabbage dumplings, and they have a different taste from dumplings with pickled radish filling. It was Xiaolan who made these dumplings with cabbage and pork filling, and Zhuangcheng regretted giving half to Kong Wei. Xiaolan's cheeks turned slightly red as she explained, "My mom made the dough wrappers. I'm not very good at making dough." Although Zhuangcheng hadn't said anything, Xiaolan felt compelled to add, "I made the filling." Zhuangcheng didn't say a word, but his pace of eating dumplings quickened. Xiaolan indeed hadn't eaten enough. Both of them had hearty appetites, and they had been doing physically demanding work. Her few dumplings at home didn't suffice. She finished a big bowl of noodle soup with both soup and noodles. Xiaolan ate quickly but gracefully, and Zhuangcheng found it pleasing. Once she put down her chopsticks, Zhuangcheng finished the dumplings and noodles in a hurry. Xiaolan reached for her purse to pay, but this time, Zhuangcheng was quicker and paid. Aunt Huang noticed something and only accepted payment from Zhuangcheng, saying, "Xiaolan, your boyfriend is quite handsome, and he's good to you." "He's not my." "Thank you for taking care of Xiaolan. Your culinary skills are excellent. I bet you'll open a big noodle shop someday," Aunt Huang said, smiling broadly. Hearing kind words early in the morning made anyone feel good, and the young man not only looked handsome but also had a sweet mouth. Xiaolan had a good eye. Zhuangcheng didn't let Xiaolan say anything. They settled the bill and left. Xiaolan was a bit annoyed. Zhuangcheng was acting presumptuous and didn't respect her wishes. He was too domineering. Zhuangcheng didn't want to upset Xiaolan but explained seriously, "With the current crackdown on crime, there's no other choice. If Aunt Huang misunderstands, I can't help it. If you and I, who are unrelated, walk around together, the next person the Anqing County Police arrest could be me." Xiaolan's expression eased a bit. Maybe it was due to what happened yesterday, but the security in the county town seemed quite strict today. Hooliganism wasn't a joke, and in public places, young men and women couldn't be too close. Once they arrived at the outskirts of the agricultural machinery factory, the aunties buying vegetables crowded around them. They were curious and commented, "Is he Xiaolan's boyfriend? Young man, it's your first time here, and you should accompany your girlfriend. Look at how pretty she is, bad people might have bad intentions. Where is this young man from?" The eggs were selling quickly, but the aunties were too inquisitive. Zhuangcheng didn't admit to being her boyfriend but didn't deny it either. He simply responded to their questions. In a short time, all the aunties buying eggs knew that Xiaolan was dating a man from Beijing who drove a big car and had a Beijing hukou. One regular customer pulled Xiaolan aside and said, "My dear, these conditions are quite impressive. I always thought you were a smart and beautiful girl. I even wanted to introduce you to my nephew, but it's too late now." Xiaolan was at a loss for words. No matter how she explained, she felt like she had fallen into a trap. Chapter 20. She will be your sister-in-law sooner or later. Xiaolan thought she was quite popular, but she was mistaken. Women tended to be envious of each other, and no matter how sweet her words were, she couldn't beat Zhuangcheng when it came to attracting business. Even though he didn't say playful things, the aunties loved crowding around Zhuangcheng. They saw that he had a good temper, and if they thought their children weren't as pretty as Xiaolan, some might even consider introducing their daughters to Zhuangcheng. The usually reserved housewives were now quite open. Xiaolan remembered a big sister who had bought 20 eggs just yesterday and had returned to buy more today. She was too naive, thinking that the county market was saturated. However, in less than an hour outside the agricultural machinery factory, all the eggs were sold out. Xiaolan thought about leaving Zhuangcheng and going back to Qianying village for more eggs, but it didn't seem like a good idea. After leaving the machinery factory, Zhuangcheng hesitated for a while and finally couldn't hold back his question, "How much do you earn by selling one egg?" "Only 1 cent. You probably don't think this business is worthwhile," Xiaolan replied. Zhuangcheng had said he was a truck driver, and Xiaolan had her doubts. He wasn't dressed particularly well, but he was wearing a high-end Rolex watch on his wrist. In the 1980s, Rolex watches, because of gold control, were classified as Class 1 luxury watches and were not commonly imported. Few people in Anqing County would recognize such a watch. Xia Xiu had gone to school, taking all of the Xia family's savings, which amounted to just over 500 yuan. However, Zhuangcheng was wearing a Rolex watch, and in the early 1980s, even the basic models of Rolex watches cost more than 800 yuan. Could a truck driver afford such an item? With one Rolex watch on Zhuangcheng's wrist, Xiaolan would need to sell more than 80,000 eggs to buy the basic model. Xiaolan was a self-employed businesswoman, and regular urban workers earned only a few dozen yuan a month. Accumulating 800 yuan would take 2 years for them. When Xiaolan realized this, most of her previous discomfort disappeared. The gap between her and Zhuangcheng was too significant. Zhuangcheng didn't say that he looked down on it. It was a tough business. Xiaolan thought about it. She couldn't depend on men to support her. Zhuangcheng's intentions were clear, and she wanted to hold on to the opportunity. Still, she didn't want to take advantage of him. This was different from someone treating her to a bowl of noodles. When you were unrelated, you couldn't expect someone to hand over their money-making opportunity. Xiaolan wouldn't feel at ease with that. Zhuangcheng nodded slowly, and Xiaolan, who appeared delicate on the outside, was actually quite proud at heart. Zhuangcheng didn't have much experience pursuing women, but he believed Xiaolan wouldn't appreciate his high-handedness. He said, "Let's wait until you've saved enough capital. You can consider partnering with Xiao Wei if you want to do business." They had known each other for less than 24 hours, and Zhuangcheng was already thinking ahead for Xiaolan. He didn't say that doing business was a bad thing. That would be why not eat meat porridge? He wanted to find an easier path for Xiaolan. She was a young girl, and she stood out too much. Selling eggs was too hard for her. "Sure, when I've saved enough capital, I'll ask Big Brother Kong if he wants to invest." Xiaolan quickly interrupted Zhuangcheng's words. She had a vision that transcended her time. Did she have to rely on men to care for her? She understood Zhuangcheng's intentions, and when the opportunity came, she wanted to grasp it. However, she didn't want to take advantage of him. This was different from someone treating her to a bowl of noodles. When you had no personal connection, you couldn't expect someone to hand over their money-making opportunities. Xiaolan wouldn't feel at ease with that. Zhuangcheng didn't insist. Xiaolan felt much more relaxed. She and Zhuangcheng returned to the guest house, where Lu Yong and Kong Wei had arrived early. Lu Yong gestured to Xiaolan and pulled her aside to talk. Zhuangcheng handed a cigarette to Kong Wei and asked, "So, did you find out anything?" Kong Wei hesitated and mumbled. Zhou Qing gave him a sharp look, and Kong Wei couldn't hide anything anymore. He said, "I went with Uncle Lu to the police station, and those 3 rascals are still locked up. While Uncle Lu was socializing with the local police, I gave the old man guarding the door 2 packs of Hong Shuangxi. Then I went in alone and gave those 3 pests another beating," they said. Kong Wei gritted his teeth, his voice almost inaudible. They said Xiaolan is known as a promiscuous woman in Dahukin. She was rolling in the haystack with some guy in broad daylight, and someone even saw her strip naked and seduce her future brother-in-law. Her family was going to deal with her, but she faked a suicide attempt. Qingzi, I think what they said has some credibility. If Xiaolan's reputation were better, those 3 pests wouldn't dare to make such accusations openly. No wonder those 3 guys got beaten to near death in the alley yesterday and invited you 2 to join in. They really underestimated Xiaolan, thinking she was available for anyone, which is why they had bad intentions. Kong Wei still couldn't believe it, but Lu Yong probably heard something that made Kong Wei somewhat convinced. Seeing Zhou Qing running around with Xiaolan, Kong Wei's emotions were complicated, and he couldn't hold back anymore. Xiaolan was incredibly beautiful, and even though Kong Wei knew about her bad reputation, he still couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty. However, a girl like her wasn't suitable for Zhou Qing. Zhou Qing had never had a girlfriend before, and if he fell for Xiaolan, the Zhou family would have a hard time handling her. They'd probably start by getting rid of the informant. Zhou Qing silently finished his cigarette. Kong Wei thought he would be furious after being fooled by a promiscuous woman like this, but to his surprise, Zhou Qing didn't get angry. Instead, he threw away the cigarette butt and smiled, saying, "Kong Wei, do you think I'm handsome?" Kong Wei nodded vigorously. The girls in the courtyard were all chasing after Qingzi, and you couldn't shoo them away. Zhou Qing's handsomeness was universally acknowledged. "Do you think I'm wealthy?" Kong Wei nodded again. Thinking about their trip to Shanghai, they were going to make a huge profit, and Zhou Qing was handing this opportunity over to him. This wasn't just being wealthy, it was more like striking it rich. Compared to that, everyone else was a pauper. Zhou Qing took one last drag of his cigarette and said, "I also think I'm handsome and wealthy. I don't have to hide my feelings about her. If she really were as bad as those punks claim, wouldn't she pounce on me, a big fish?" Unfortunately, not only did Xiaolan not seduce him, but she also remained unfazed in the face of his straightforward advances. "Ah." Kong Wei had his mouth wide open, and Zhou Qing continued, "Be a bit more considerate in your attitude later. She'll be your sister-in-law sooner or later." On the other side, Xiaolan and Lu Yong had finished their conversation. They walked over with concerned expressions, and Kong Wei's reaction was as dramatic as a Sichuan opera face change. He was convinced. Foreigners talked about Cupid with bare buttocks shooting someone with an arrow. He believed Zhou Qing was the one struck by that arrow.